Good morning, everybody. Maybe it's me, but I kind of have this sense that somewhere along the line, this song that we just heard, this idea that I'll be there. I will be there for the long haul. Hey, we're going to make a commitment for a lifetime until death do us part. I think somehow this concept has been sort of relegated to classic movies and sappy old love songs, but most of us don't really believe it. I think we idealize it. We wish it were so. But the truth is that our culture has turned in such a way that most people cannot really envision the idea of a long-distance relationship, a lifelong relationship of mutual exclusivity, that you stay connected together, that you stay in love, that you work through the issues. And so what happens is we get to the edge of pain, we get to the edge of frustration, we get into some difficult place in our lives, and we start to think to ourselves, maybe this was a mistake. And maybe there's really, maybe destiny really has somebody else out there that would be better for me. And so we jump ship. And this happens so much. Now, I've been talking about this subject for so many years now that I know what's happening already. Some of you are shutting me down. And you're turning me off, and you're going to be on Facebook or whatever, or just walk out because you're offended, because you've been divorced, or you love and know someone who's been divorced, and you think that I'm about to spend the next however long just beating up on divorced people and talking about how bad they are and all that. Listen, I want you to hear me before you completely turn me off. Here's where I'm coming from. In this talk, there is no condemnation. This is going to be a rule for this talk. There is no condemnation. The past is in the past. And aren't you thankful that the past is all in the past? And that's what I mean when I say it. No condemnation. This is not about what's happened in our past. This is about where we are now and where we are going to go in our future. The past is behind us. We're talking about today and where we're going as we look ahead. And really, that's the commitment of our church. This is the heart of our church. Our mission statement is real simple. We don't want to condemn people. It's not my job to come and try to make people feel bad. We actually want to help people connect with God. This is our mission statement. Connecting people with God. That's what TVC is about. These 4 words. Would you say them out loud with me? Connecting people with God. That is our heart. And my hope is that as I give this talk, and this talk's going to be a little different than some, and that I'm not going to try to apply it with a lot of humor, and I'm not going to try to, insert a lot of stories and everything. This is a fairly serious talk. But I hope that you will hear through it, not condemnation, but hope. And that you'll find in some way a way to have a deeper connection with God. And if you're in a marriage relationship or a relationship that is intimate and heading in the direction of marriage, that you'll find greater depth and help there. That's my hope. We want to help people connect with God. And actually, I don't know what the future holds for us as a church. I can just tell you I'm excited about where we're at these days. Just a little stat that you may be interested in. Last weekend, of course, it was Easter weekend, but between our 3 campuses, we had, that we know of, 88 people make decisions for Christ. Is that awesome or what? 88 people make decisions for Christ. So it's our goal, it is our goal, that we help people connect to God, not condemn them. Now, on top of that, I'm also aware that some of you who are sitting here listening or watching online or at one of our other campuses, you're also maybe saying, well, I'm just out of a divorce, and you talking about couples, the last thing on my mind right now, it's not on my radar. I'm not, I don't want to have a relationship. I don't want to get married. And then some of you may be like 11 years old, and you're like, dude, that's a long way off for me yet. And you're right, it should be. It should be a long, long way off. And so you're saying, will this be applicable to me? And what I would say to you is I actually think what I'm going to talk about is applicable across the board in our lives. It will help us in so many different ways. It's just these things, particularly as it relates to marriage, but in all of our lives, these things are just so important. And, I've been talking about this stuff for decades now, almost 4 decades, marriage relationships and family relationships. And I'm trying to live this myself and often not doing a very good job of it. And maybe you don't see it like I do, but I actually don't think there's another relationship in life where you see as much pain, as much loss, as much damage can be done as in an intimate relationship where there's a commitment to be together. I don't know of any other place that is so costly to us in terms of what happens in people's lives when it starts to go south. And the reasons, I think, are pretty obvious. With that person that I've opened myself up to, it's like I am to them skin off. My nerve endings are all exposed to them. Now, the reason for that is that helps me engage more fully in a relationship with them. I can go more deeply. I can relate more heavily. I'm open to them, completely open to them, and it's a beautiful thing when that happens. The downside, of course, to it is that when the person whom I've opened myself up to, and now, I've peeled the skin back, and it's just all the sensors are exposed. When I get dinged by that person, when they speak a harsh word, when they criticize me, or when they condemn me, or when they accuse me, or when whatever happens like that, it just strikes me to the core. These relationships have unbelievable power in our lives. And I think we have no idea in many cases how much they cost us. And some of you are going, yeah, I went through a divorce. It cost me 80% of everything I own. I'm talking way beyond that. I'm talking about the damage that can happen in families and in lives and in futures and all kinds of stuff. It's just, we can't undervalue the significance of relationships that are heading to marriage and in a marriage relationship. So, since we're talking ground rules, first ground rule is no condemnation. Past is in the past. We're talking about where we're at and where we're going. Let's add another ground rule. And you won't like this one either, probably. But this is what I'm hoping you'll do. I'm hoping that you will hear this talk for you. I will hear this talk for me. Now, what that means is no elbow stuck into the side of the person next to you. No looking at him going, I hope you're listening to him. None of that. This is for me. Let's just make a ground rule that we're not going to turn and look and make snide remarks like, well, you'll never get better at that one. Let's just not do that. Let's think about how it relates to us. And in this series now, we're talking about the greatest thing ever. If you weren't here last weekend, I would encourage you to listen to the podcast or watch it online at our website, because we talked about what matters of all the things in your busy life, all your possessions, all your ownings, everything, of anything that you have. The single most important thing in life is the love of God. It's the love of God. This love which Jesus, rising from the dead, proved. Something I said last week, and I want to repeat again, and I want you just to get this in your head. Greatest thing, love, the love of God. It's the greatest kind of love there is. It never fails, or you could say, God's love always wins. Let's say that together. God's love, it always wins. It always wins. You can kill it, but it won't stay down. You can try to damage it. You can try to take it out, but it will not be refused. Of all the things you ever dedicate your life to, you may build a business. You may become a great athlete. You may have wonderful relationships and a great reputation in your community. But of all the things you're ever engaged in, ever involved in, the single greatest thing that counts in your life will be, did you operate with the love of God? Did you experience it to you and then through you? And so we're talking about love. And this weekend, I know some of you are going, okay, so you're talking about God's love, but you're also talking about couples. And that sounds a little creepy, like, is God's love the same as couple love? That's a little weird. Actually, my answer would be yes and no. I understand that there are all different kinds of love because there's all different kinds of relationships. So you have, brotherly love. You have parental love. You have familial love. Your sisters, your brothers, people in your family. You have communal love, so people that maybe you're not as close to emotionally, but you're geographically close to them, the people in your community, and all those people we are called to love. Actually, Scripture's absolute on this one. Peter drives this home. 1 Peter 4:8 says this, above all. And what do you think the words above all mean? Anybody have an idea? I think they mean above all. Above all, in other words, more than anything else, more important than anything else in life, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. everybody around you in your life, you are called to love with the God kind of love. Greatest thing, love. Everybody's called to that. We're called to love everyone with that kind of love. Now, there's all those different kinds of relationships, brotherly love, family love, all these things. And then, of course, there's romantic love. And while all these different kinds of love are shared in different ways, at least on the surface, the interesting thing is, and this is very interesting to me, when you peel back the surface of any kind of love, and you look underneath, the vast majority of what's under there is the same thing you'll find in every other kind of love. It's just the stuff on the top. Now, let me be clear, okay? I'm not going to love a guy that I work with like I love my wife. Not going to happen. I don't come to the office here at the Hastings campus in the morning and find our executive pastor, Joel Strickland, and give him a hug and a kiss in the morning. I do not do that, all right? No matter how much he wants it, it's not going to happen ever. And I hope he's listening. I'm not going to love my children the same way I love my wife. I'm not going to love, people that I work with the same way I love my children. There are different aspects. But here's the interesting thing, that when you peel back that top layer, almost all of it underneath is really principally the same kind of love. The thread that runs through all of it is the greatest thing kind of love. It's interesting because business leaders understand what some people call the 80-20 principle, that you can hire a guy. Let's say you're a business leader and you want to hire somebody, but they're in a different industry and you want to hire them for leadership. What they understand is that 80% of the leadership that they use, whatever they do, will be applicable in your job. So, for example, you can take a guy that works over here in a factory and he is a plant manager. He's over dozens of people, and he's out on the floor with him, and he's in jeans and a blue shirt every day. He's just out. You can pull that guy out of his position, move him up to the 50th floor of a fancy financial institution, and 80% of what he used in leadership there will be applicable here. It's only that top layer of the 20% that he's going to have to start wearing a suit. He's going to have to start learning a little bit more about finances. But the rest of it, the leadership principles, are all the same. They operate the same. And this is exactly how it works in love. Though I may love my mother differently than I love my child or somebody that I work with, the basics, the central theme of it, the thing that matters most of all, the greatest thing, love, most of that stuff is exactly the same. So I'm going to give you in this talk, and I'm doing this for time's sake because there's so much we could talk about, particularly when we're zeroing in on couples and on marriage relationships. I'm going to give you just 2 statements that I want you to chew on. And these are really powerful. And they're things that you will say, I knew that. But you need to hear it again. And I need to hear it again. And what I'm hoping that you'll do as you hear these 2 statements that I want you to think about is, I hope instead of just going, well, that's a good point, that's probably something to think about, I want you to ask yourself a couple questions. Here they are. First question I want you to ask yourself is, how am I doing with this? In other words, how am I living this out? And then the second question pushes me a little further. What or how do I need to change to move the ball further down the field? In other words, how can I get better at this? How am I doing with this? And then how can I get better with this? Now, these 2 statements that I'm about to give you, you will notice that they are both I statements. And here is the reason why. All right, let me just ask a question. How many of you are married? Would you just lift your hand if you're married, please? All right, there's a ton of you in here who are married. How many of you who are married have learned that you're not very good at fixing your husband or wife? Would you just lift your hand, please, if you learned that? And if you didn't lift your hand, you're on drugs. I think sometimes this is what I see happen. And I've done, I found out pretty early on in the ministry that I was called as a pastor to speak and to lead in the church. But I wasn't the greatest counselor in the world. But I've done my fair share of counseling. And this is my observation across the board, is that most people come into a counseling situation, and what they want to say is, right off the bat, is, if he would just. And he said, whoa, if you would just. And it's always about what the other person should do. Come on, you know what I'm talking about, right? You all know what I'm talking about. You're always thinking that. We all do that. We project. And it's like, if you would just stop treating me this way, if you would talk to me, if you would, then everything would be wonderful. And we think if they would get fixed, it's all, somehow, I don't know what, it's like we fool ourselves into thinking, I'm just perfect. If she would behave herself, everything would be fine. And I know some of you guys right now are going, yeah, but you're wrong. You can't fix her. She can't fix you. The only person that I can fix it's me. It's me. So these statements are going to be I statements, and I want you to think about them. How am I doing in this, in my relationship, in my marriage? And if you're not married, you can look at this at other relationships because these are both applicable to those. And then what do I need to do to move the ball further down the field? Here's the first one. If you want to be a greatest thing couple, if you want to have the kind of love that goes the distance, that really lasts, first statement is, I communicate. I was just going to put I talk, but I thought communicate makes me sound smarter, so I put communicate up there, and I'm not sure that it's working. But this so much has been said about communication, and some of you are going to be going, oh, Lord, I've heard all this before, and you probably have. But I cannot tell you how much I see damage take place because of a lack in this particular area. Because people don't talk. And so this is just so crucial that I have to address this. Here's the bottom line. If we don't communicate, we can't resolve issues. And issues happen in life. Would you agree with that? I mean, you're going to be married like 30 seconds. And issues are going to happen. Issues happen in life. I've said this jokingly for years because I've been to so many weddings and been involved. I've been the one standing in front, while they're saying their vows to each other and pronouncing them husband and wife and all that. And often there's this little part of me that's just laughing because here's the couple up there and they're holding hands with each other and they're looking at each other and they're repeating their vows. And you'll see a little tear creep down an eye. And it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I realize, and in about 2 minutes, something's going to happen, and it won't be quite as sweet. Come on now, married couples, is that true? I mean, some of you are going, honey, that was happening before we ever said our vows. It's like issues are going to come up in your marriage. And if you do not talk about them, what you assure is that they will bring greater damage than they would have if you would have addressed them and communicated. This is an absolute thing. And this is what Scripture teaches. I love what Paul writes in Ephesians 4:15. He says, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ. This is very important here. This statement is really powerful. We will speak. We will speak the truth. And then the third thing is we will speak the truth in love. But what he's saying is you got to talk. You got to talk. Even though you feel wounded, even though you're hurt, even though you're angry, even though you're frustrated, even though you got all this stuff, you've got to talk. And I know there's some of you sitting in the room right now going, dude, we have talked until I feel like my tongue is going to fall out, and it doesn't seem to be making any difference. And I understand that just talking does not fully bring resolution to it. There are things you have to do. Listen, I get it that just talking doesn't assure reconciliation. But I can tell you what not talking does. It does assure deepening destruction and damage to the relationship. You have to talk. You have to talk. And it seems to me, if you look at relationships, and I see this happen all the time, if you look at them, I don't know really of much that is more damaging to relationships than this one right here. People stop talking. In fact, if you look at relationships where people have separated, where they've gotten divorced, where they've parted company and they don't even want to talk to each other, look at each other, you trace this thing back up and you're going to find you come to a place where they stopped talking to each other. They stopped communicating. And then things begin to build and things begin to get worse and worse and worse, and damage is done. And this is exactly what happens in relationships. You see these breaches in relationships. And what a shame it is, because the math is so simple. The math is really, you can't resolve what you don't talk about. Can I say it again? Some of you this is what you came to hear this week. You can't resolve what you don't talk about. You know, this message is so hard to preach because I can go in 4,000 directions on this one. I'll tell you, it's really hard. But one of the things I see that I think couples sometimes, it'll happen, is if you loved me, you would know. Really? So if I love you, I become God. If you loved me, you would know that my heart is broken. You would know that I'm in a difficult place. You would know whatever. Listen, please hear me. And more often than not, wives think this because wives are more intuitive. But guys are not often quite as intuitive. And you're saying, if you loved me, you would know what's going on the inside of me. And the guy's looking at you like, oh. And he's not dumb. He's actually smart. He's driven and he'd like to make the relationship better, but he does not know because you think he should know doesn't mean he knows. You have to talk. You have to talk. You cannot assume that it's just going to happen because, we've got this love that just surpasses everything and it'll be wonderful. No, you've been doing too many drugs. You have to talk. You have to talk. Listen, when you bury, and I don't even know if you realize this, when you bury stuff unreconciled, when you bury it down on the inside, let me just tell you what you're doing, because I know some of you are in a place, you so need to hear this talk this weekend, just to think about it. I don't know if it's going to help you. You'll make the choice on that. But you've been hurt, and you're wounded, and you feel sad, and you feel like you're just a mess on the inside. And you're just sick. See, because you think you've talked about it enough. I've said it. I told you. I've talked about this. And you think that should be enough. And you're just like, you know what? Forget it. And so you're taking this stuff and you're burying it down inside because you think that talking about it because it hasn't made any difference, so why should it make any more difference? And so you bury it down inside. And when you do that, what you are doing is you are packing your moving van so that you can move your lives to zombie land, where everything you thought was buried comes back to attack you. And it does. It does. And if you don't talk and keep talking, even though the last time you talked didn't seem to work out too well, even though it escalated into an argument, you walk away from it, you separate, and then you come back and you talk again because you cannot reconcile what you do not talk about. You cannot reconcile what you do not talk about. You have to talk. This is why Jesus instituted what we call the golden rule. You all know what the golden rule is. This is how Jesus said it. Matthew 7:12. He said, so in everything, not just some things, but in everything, you do to others what you would have them do to you. He doesn't say you do to others what they did to you, which happens in marriage a lot. Oh, you want to treat me that way? You don't want to talk to me? Fine. Come on, don't look. This looks like a convention of angels. All right, let's just look honest here, all right? You don't want to talk to me? Fine, I won't talk to you either. Jesus said, no, I didn't say do what they did to you. I said you do what you want them to do to you. Now, I don't know everything you want done to you, but I can tell you one thing, and I know this. And some of you will go, no, I don't, but you just hang on. You want people to talk to you. You want people to tell you the truth, not in an aggressive, vicious, attacking manner, but you want them to come to you and tell you what it is you need to know, because if they never tell you, you don't know how to address it. You want them to tell you. No marriage that I know of, no relationship and family, no friendship has ever had probably has never had a time where someone didn't look at the other person and say, why didn't you tell me this before? We've all said that. We've all said to somebody, why are you just now telling me this? What the heck is wrong with you? This 6 months ago? Why didn't you tell me? And the reason we're upset by it is because what we wish people would do is tell us in a timely fashion so that we can deal with the thing. And Jesus says, you don't do for people what they did to you. You do what you would like. And what you would like is you would like them to talk to you. You want them to speak the truth to you in love. But you want that. And so you have to do that. Now what happens, of course, is that when we get into a marriage relationship, and of course, it's all lovey-dovey and everything, everybody's happy at the wedding and everything, and then as life goes on, things get difficult at times, and you get wounded and you get hurt and everything, and we tend to default into a couple different extremes, and we'll move towards one of two different extremes. On the one side, you have nagging, and then on the far other side, you have withdrawal. Now, I'm just curious, where do you think you land in this continuum? Don't look at the person next to you and go, well, I know where you land. Just where do you land? Where do you think you land in this continuum between nagging and just like withdrawal where you just don't talk? Everybody has a default mode, and they're going to slide in one direction or the other. Now, some of you are going, well, some people call it nagging, but Jeff, you've been saying, and I've been feeling really good about this talk so far because you say we should talk to each other, and I'm just talking to him. Okay, so let's just clarify what nagging is, all right? Nagging is not conversation with the hope of reconciliation. Nagging is accusatory, is inflammatory. It's like, you never do this. I've asked you 1,000 times, but you never do this. You keep doing this thing. It brings accusation. It brings bitterness. Now, sometimes it comes in subtle, sarcastic remarks. Sometimes it comes in backwards, passive-aggressive ways. But nagging is not where you're saying, I'm trying to reconcile. Nagging is where you're saying, you have let me down time and again. You all with me on that? And I know some of you are saying, yeah, I'm married to that. I can tell you that right now. No. This talk is for you. Listen. Now, here's from a man's perspective on this, all right? This is Solomon. He writes in Proverbs 21. He says, better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. Better to live in a desert. Now, some of you are going, that's so sexist. This is just from a guy's perspective. I guarantee you there are some women, some wives in this room right here who could stand up and say, better to live in a desert than with a nagging and quarrelsome husband. Because this is not about sex. This is not about males and females. This is about which direction you're bent in. So generally, verbal processors will default in the direction of nagging. You want to know the truth about me? I'm a verbal processor. So what direction do you think I default in? I don't withdraw. I nag. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I don't want to see your hands. It's just whatever. But it's not communication. It's not talking. It's actually very destructive. And then on the other hand, you have the people who have been sitting right now, all self-righteous, like, yeah, these naggers, they're just, I just keep it to myself and shut up. Yes, you do. And it never gets resolved. And this is what happens. You are like a dam in which more and more creatures get added to the reservoir behind you. And then they grow and get bigger and bigger. And when the dam breaks, baby, it's like the legions of hell have been let loose. Now, I don't want to look for hands, but some of you know what I'm talking about. You got into something with your husband or wife, and that person is a withdrawal kind of person. They just keep it to themselves and don't say anything. But then when they blow, oh my gosh. They're spewing poison from 6 years ago. And they're talking about all the horrible things you did because what they thought was if I just push it down, it'll go away. It does not. The dead arise and the zombies come out. And they do great damage to your relationship. So you can't go in either direction and find comfort. What you have to do is you have to make a commitment. We will talk. I talk. I talk with the idea of reconciliation. Folks, this is such a huge, this is huge. And some of you are saying, I feel like every time we start to talk, it just degenerates so quickly into an argument and then to yelling and screaming and all this bad stuff and swearing and so forth. All right, now just listen to me for a second. Again, this is stuff some of you want to hear, some of you don't want to hear it, but I think all of us need to hear it, including me. Some of us are at a place where we need to take these conversations in front of a counselor. And here's why I say that. There, in that place, when a third party is present, it will change a little bit of how you approach it. And they can sometimes help you see that which you are not seeing. I believe in counseling, and more specifically, I believe in marriage counseling. And I've been unashamed to say over the years, I've done counseling, gone for counseling, and I have gone for marriage counseling. And I'm not ashamed to say it because this is my opinion. I don't know why this is, but so many couples go like, if we go, this is what you have in the back of your head. If we go for counseling, that means we're a failure. If you go for counseling, that means you're smart. Okay, that was really good preaching right there. I think a lot of you missed that. If you go for counseling, that means you're smart. Oh my gosh, when your car breaks down, you go, well, I wish we could go to a mechanic, but if the neighbors see we're going to a mechanic, they're going to think we're failures. That's just stupid. First of all, who cares what your stinking neighbors think? Secondly, if your car's broke, you take it to the mechanic to help get it fixed, right? So when your marriage is struggling, go to someone. They're not going to be able to fix it, but they will help you to process it so that you can do what needs to be done. It's powerful. Someone said to me, how do you know when it's time to go to counseling? My response to that is, if you think it might be time to go to counseling, you are past due to go for counseling. That didn't go over very well. I'm just going to leave it at that, all right? Let me give you just one more quick thought on this whole communication thing, because I think this is really important. Be thoughtful about any communication that's going to be potentially disruptive. And here's what I mostly mean by that. When you're going to your husband or wife, or that significant other, if you're going to them to talk, and it's a hot topic, don't go angry. Now listen, I'm giving you some important stuff here. Don't go angry. And here is the reason why. If you want reconciliation, when you go angry, you are setting it up for fail. Because, let's say you have something you want to say to me, and it's a difficult subject, but it needs to be said. And you come to me and you're angry. I am, like almost every human being, perceptive enough to pick up the visual and even aura effect cues that you are ticked. So as soon as I sense you coming my direction and you are angry, one of two things is going to happen. This is instinctual. I can't get away from this. It's not something that I can easily overcome. I'm going to go into a fight or flight response. So I'm either going to bring my paws up to fight back, or I'm going to put myself in a defensive mode. Either way, it puts a wall between us because you came, not necessarily because you have bad intentions, but because you brought with the conversation your anger, and it puts me in a place of defense. I've been trying to live and have not done it nearly successful. I keep working at this and keep working at it, but I have what I call the 8+ hour rule, that I have a minimum of 8 hours before I address something that's potentially disruptive because I'm angry. So if I'm ticked, I'm going to make myself stay for 8 hours away from that before I would ever talk to them as a minimum. And I just now call it the 8+ rule because I was talking with a friend. He said, Jeff, sometimes at the end of 8 hours, I'm more mad than I was when I started the 8 hours. And I said, you got a point there. Sometimes it might be a day or it might be 2. But I want to come back to that conversation when I am not bringing this well of energy that can erupt if the wrong response comes. I want to come not with, listen, this is really powerful. I want to come not to ventilate, but to reconcile. And there is a massive difference between the two. I don't come to ventilate, I come to reconcile. And so that means I am going to make sure my anger is tempered so that I'm not being driven by that anger. So first thing, I communicate. Second thing, we got to move through this quickly, is I come back. And I will say this. This is going to sound a little bit bad maybe. I think I'm a little cynical. I know that. But sometimes I will hear couples actually say, we've just never had a disagreement in our years of marriage. You're either lying or taking too much of a particular medication. Because there are no gods here among us. There's only one God, and we are not Him. Come on, amen? And so we are going to hurt people. We're going to let people down. We're going to wound them, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, maybe more often unintentionally. But these things are going to happen in a marriage relationship. And it's crazy to think they won't. So issues do come up. And we get knocked down. We really do. And as important as I think this idea of I communicate is, and I think it's huge, I'm going to actually say to you that I think this next one is even more important, that I come back. But no matter how upset I am, no matter how hurt I am, no matter how wounded I am, I do not quit. I come back. Now, I know some of you are in a place of woundedness, and some of you are fresh off a divorce, and you say, you're just beating me up now with all this. Listen, I understand. Whatever's in the past is in the past. It does not matter. We're talking about where we are from here and where we move into the future. But I think too many of us, we somehow think that marriage should just be this, wonderful, rewarding, beautiful thing that's every day, all the time, great. And that's not a reality in real life. And the people that have the deepest, the strongest, the longest term relationships are the ones that understand that you get wounded and you get hurt. But you don't just quit and walk away. You come back. Now, let me just say, and I want to be clear on this. If you are in a physically abusive, dangerous situation, you need to get out of that cycle. And if you need help with that, you come and see us. We will help you get out of that cycle. I'm not saying that you have to quit on that. But you have to get out of the cycle of abuse. It's absolutely critical that you get out of that cycle of abuse. And then maybe you can come back to it at some point. Maybe you won't. I don't know how all that works. But the thing you have to understand is that if you're there, you have to get out of that. Now, having said that, I will tell you that I think many people, they walk away way too quick just because they feel bad and sad. And we've had this culture teach us this idea that really the truth is that the way real life works, if you're really doing good, is that marriage will make you feel good all the time. And that is not a reality. It is not true. Sometimes, you know what it's like. Any of you ever seen like an old couple and they're walking down the street and they're holding hands and leaning against each other and you go, oh, look at those old people. They love each other. Isn't that sweet? And you see that and you think that's so wonderful. Unfortunately, now Ann and I are in that crowd. People look at us, oh, look at that sweet old couple holding hands, walking on the beach. And you think, how sweet is that? How wonderful is that? What you don't see were all the times where they're like, don't touch me. I don't even want to talk to you right now. I don't even want to be around you right now. You've hurt me the way you behaved in this way. You've done this. They've had tons of those times. They've had plenty of those things happen in their life. All kinds of them. These things are part of real life. And what they don't see also is that couple said, no matter what, they took the D word out of their vocabulary. We do not say, oh yeah? Well, let's just get a divorce. We do not say, you want to leave? Leave. I'm fine with that. We don't talk that way. Years ago, some of you have heard me say this. Ann and I were in a conference. We were pretty newly married. And we're down in Houston, Texas, this conference. And the speaker had all the couples that were married turn to each other, hold hands and look at each other. And then say those two magic words loud. And they were, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. And we repeated, I don't know how many times he had us repeat it, but the essence of it was saying this, that you are in this. You said, till death do us part. So let's make it till death do us part. Let's stay with it. Don't give up. Don't quit. Don't walk away from this. Listen, I know this is not simple. I know some of you are saying, I'm in this really difficult and I've tried talking, and you have to keep talking. But I'm telling you, the power of coming back, sometimes we miss this. And Scripture backs this up. This is Galatians 6:9. It says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper, time, we'll reap a harvest. Now, this last part is really important. If we if we don't give up. If we don't give up. Any of you watch the movie Rudy? Anybody remember the movie Rudy? It's about 25 years old now. I love sappy movies like that, and Rudy was so cool. It's about a guy that wanted to be a player on the Notre Dame football team. And of course, he did not have the athletic ability. He did not have the strength or the size or any of that. But he was just this guy that was just totally determined to do it. And the thing we love about Rudy in the movie, and I do, Rudy, it's so amazing, is not that he was athletic, not that he was greatly skilled, not that he was big and strong and he was one of these superstar football players. It was that he was an underdog that really had nothing going for him. But he put his head down and he had humble persistence and he would not quit. And when you get to the end of the movie, it's so great because you see this scene where the coach lets him dress as one of the team. And then he lets him play at the very end. It's just a mercy shot at playing, but he lets him play. His dream has come true, his moment of glory. And it's just this beautiful thing. And the music soars. And, I always get a little cry right there at the end and everything. It's so wonderful. What I love about him is that he would not quit. He would not give up. And I think some of us have lost sight of how important that is. Just stay with it. I love a quote by Calvin Coolidge, and let's get that up on the screen. There we are. This is what he says. This is such a great quote. He says, nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent won't. Nothing's more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world's full of educated derelicts. And then he says this, persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. I love this. I love this. It's like you understand. It's not how smart you are, how fast you are, how much you've been gifted. It is, will you just keep coming back? And this is so true. I think too many people miss their moments of glory in marriage because they just walk away from it. This is how Scripture says it. It says, therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to, read those 3 words, stand your ground. You don't run, you stand your ground, you come back, you stay there. And after you've done everything, he says to stand. This is so powerful. And folks, I understand. Again, I just want to say, I know some of you are in difficult places in your marriage. You're like, I don't even know if it's too late for counseling. Is it too late for whatever? I mean, we have these feelings. It's just too late, too late, too late. I think we quit way too soon. Just be careful with that. The truth is, Paul says this, I like this. He says, we get knocked down. We do. It happens in life. But we are not destroyed. You do get knocked down. I know some of you are in very discouraging places these days. You're in very discouraging places these days. Look, you know what the 2 most important words in the statement I just made is? It's not very discouraging. It's these days. Don't lose sight of the fact that these days are not all your days. These days are not your past. These days are not your future. They're just these days. And don't make the mistake many make. I actually wrote it down this way. Don't make the mistake of clothing tomorrow with today's rags. This is what so many of us do. It's like, this is the way it is. It's just terrible. My life is terrible. You're in these days. You don't know what the future has to hold. So keep coming back. And we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Keep coming back. Don't try to make tomorrow into what it is today. Today is just today. And I think many of us are confused. We look at it and we go, oh man, this is a bad time. Here's another statement I wrote down that I think is really good. Too often we interpret a season as a sign. It's like we're in a bad season in our marriage. And they come, they happen. It's like you remember when the sex was great and, you talked deeply and all this stuff was going on. It's like today, it's like, yeah. And so we misinterpret a season that we're going through as a sign that this would be the rest of our eternity unless we run. And I know some of you feel like winter is never going to end. But spring's coming. Come on. Is that true? Spring is coming. Don't interpret a season as a sign. Let me give you one last quote and we'll close. This is a Corrie ten Boom quote. I love this. She said, when a train goes through a tunnel and the world gets dark, do you jump out? Of course not. You sit still and you trust the engineer to get you through. You just hang on. I talk. I communicate. And I come back. Even if it hurts, even if I don't want to, I come back. And if you think you need or you're ready to say yes to marriage counseling, go out to the Next Step area. We have a list. We recommend and point people in the direction of good counselors that will help you. We know of them. Maybe you'd like to get involved in a life group for marriage. That folder that you were handed when you came in, it talks about that. And you can find more out about that at the Next Step area. So, all right. I think I beat this to death. I know this is a serious one. It was like last night, I didn't have a lot of people going, that was so awesome. They were just looking at me like, you are the devil. But I'm okay talking about this stuff because I think we need to hear stuff that we don't always want to hear. Would you agree with that? I mean, sometimes we need to hear stuff that kind of makes us go, ouch. And it's okay. It's okay. Now, before you leave, I just want to tell everybody, in the end of this month, the last weekend of this month, we're doing baptisms here at the Hastings campus. If you've not been baptized, baptism is so cool. What baptism is it's you making a public statement that you are all in for Jesus, that you're a follower of Christ. You identify with him in his death, as you go down in the water, his burial, and as you come up out, his resurrection. A lot of you have been to baptisms here. We have a lot of fun. We hoot and holler and cheer and just celebrate because it's like we're saying, I'm in, I'm all in for Jesus. So if you have not been baptized or you were, but it wasn't your choice, somebody chose it for you, we'd love to be a part of your baptism in just a few weeks on the 28th and 29th. And you can sign up at Next Step or call the office. Let's stand to our feet and I'll send you out with a blessing. God, help us to walk with an awareness of how important it is to talk and keep talking, to do it right, but to talk and to keep coming back and not giving up. Help us to walk away with this. Give us strength and encouragement to do the right thing, to not give up. And we trust you for your help. In Jesus' name, let's say together, amen.